When exactly did Walter White stop being a good man? Was it when he decided to cook meth? Or when he started to enjoy it? Because there's a fine line between doing something out of desperation and doing it for power. But what if I told you Breaking Bad isn't really about crime? It's about pride, and what happens when an ordinary man realizes he was never ordinary. He was just ignored. Today, we'll break down how a soft-spoken chemistry teacher became one of television's most terrifying antiheroes, and why that transformation was never an accident. By the end of this video, you'll understand the exact process of how pride turns brilliance into destruction. Because Breaking Bad isn't just Walter's story, it's ours. And to understand how that transformation unfolds, how a man goes from invisible to untouchable, we'll break it down into 3 acts. Each act reveals a stage of his descent, and together they show why his fall was never just about meth, but about meaning. So let's start at the beginning, where every tragedy starts quietly, with a man who once believed he was good. Act 1. The origin of the invisible teacher. Before Heisenberg, before the hat, before the empire, there was a man who stood in front of a whiteboard explaining the beauty of chemistry to a class that didn't care. Fluorescent lights hum above him. Students scroll through their phones. And behind Walter's polite smile, something is dying. He was invisible. Maybe worse than that. Forgettable. But Walter wasn't supposed to be a nobody. He was a genius. A co-founder of Gray Matter Technologies, a company that would later be worth billions. And yet, he walked away. From success, from recognition, from the future that could have been his. Why? Maybe for family. Maybe for fear. Or maybe because he believed he'd have another chance. But life doesn't always give second chances. And that's where Walter's story becomes quietly tragic. Because he isn't a man who failed. He's a man who settled. He traded greatness for stability. He buried his ambition under responsibility. And here's the part that hurts. Walter didn't lose his potential. He abandoned it. For years, he smiled politely while others made decisions for him. He apologized when he wasn't at fault. He convinced himself that mediocrity was peace, when it was really slow death. Then came the diagnosis: lung cancer. The clock started ticking. And suddenly the question he'd avoided his whole life stood in front of him. What have I done with my life? Something inside him, something buried, began to wake up. The resentment, the pride, the intelligence. The desire to matter. When he looks in the mirror, he doesn't see a teacher anymore. He sees a man who's been cheated. By life, by others, maybe even by himself. So he makes a decision. If he's going to die, he won't die invisible. He'll make a mark. But power never begins as power. It begins as justification. And soon those justifications will turn into something far darker. Act 2. The heart of the monster. When Walter cooks meth for the first time, he tells himself it's logical, a way to leave money for his family. A practical act, not a moral one. But that's the first lie. Because what he really feels in that RV, watching blue smoke rise from his beaker, isn't guilt. It's thrill. The thrill of creation, of power, of being seen. And that's the genius of Breaking Bad. We don't watch Walter fall into evil, we watch him rise into it, with logic, precision, and purpose. At first, we understand him. He's been humiliated his entire life. His boss at the car wash mocks him. Hank turns him into a joke. Even at home, he's invisible. So when he steps into this new world, a world where people listen, where people fear him, it's intoxicating. He's not Walter White anymore. He's important. And here's the truth nobody wants to admit.
Walter wasn't addicted to meth. He was addicted to significance. He begins to rationalize everything, every lie, every betrayal, every death, all in the name of family. But deep down, he's protecting only one thing: his ego. When Skylar questions him, he gets defensive. When Jesse doubts him, he manipulates. He treats everyone like a variable in his personal equation, predictable, controllable. Because in Walter's mind, life has become chemistry again, and chemistry can be controlled. But here's the irony. In trying to escape invisibility, Walter becomes something far worse: untouchable. The hat, the sunglasses, the voice. They're not a disguise. They're liberation. Heisenberg isn't a mask. He's Walter unchained, unfiltered, unapologetic. And that's why this story hits so hard. Because it doesn't show us a good man turning bad. It shows us how good intentions rot into self-delusion. There comes a moment when Walter isn't pretending to be Heisenberg anymore. He is Heisenberg. And from that point on, this isn't about survival. It's about domination.
Act 3. The Birth of Heisenberg. The true birth of Heisenberg doesn't happen with the hat. It happens when Walter stops lying to himself, when the illusion of doing it for his family collapses, and all that remains is pride. You can trace his final descent through his choices. When he watches Jane die and does nothing, that's not about money, it's about control. When he poisons Brock to manipulate Jesse, that's not survival, it's power. And when he says, "I am the one who knocks," he's not warning Skylar, he's announcing his arrival. By now, Walter isn't fighting death anymore, he's fighting irrelevance. He wants the world to know his name. But empires built on ego always collapse, and so does his. The money, the respect, the family, all gone. He's left alone with the only thing he ever truly loved, his genius. Because for Walter, chemistry was never about science. It was about control. Control over the chaos of his life. And that's why his ending feels poetic. He dies surrounded by the same machines and metal that once made him feel alive. And for the first time, he tells the truth. I did it for me. I liked it. I was good at it. That confession changes everything. It's not a tragedy, it's a liberation. Because in his twisted way, Walter finally wins. He mattered. He left a legacy, even if it was written in blood and blue. In the end, Breaking Bad isn't about crime. It's about identity. It's about what happens when the need to be seen outweighs the need to be good. Walter White's transformation from teacher to Heisenberg is a mirror, reflecting what ambition looks like when morality disappears. What happens when intelligence meets desperation, when pride becomes purpose. And maybe that's why Breaking Bad still haunts us, because it doesn't just tell us a story, it asks us a question. If you were Walter White, how far would you go to matter? And maybe that's the most terrifying part, because deep down, we all have a little Heisenberg waiting for permission to exist. So tell me in the comments, was Walter always destined to become Heisenberg, or did the world push him there? If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit like, subscribe, and join me next time as we explore another story that blurs the line between genius and madness. See you in the next Couch Bingers.